Alright, so hello and welcome to my presentation, Communication in Family Relationships. This is going to be narrated by me, Albert, and it was done by, obviously, myself, Karina, Brianna, and Karina. So let's get started. The first thing that I would like to talk about today is couple conflicts. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about family communication and how families can negotiate changes in their lives and what they can do about that. But I'd like to start out with couples conflicts. Couples communication changes when children enter the picture, and this is one of the biggest changes in their lives. There are three phases leading up to this big change in their lives. There's the engagement, where people have to figure out their future together, and then there's the wedding, which can be stressful with all the planning and trying to coordinate everything. And then there's the young couple life, where the couple is focused on managing their new life together. So children add a new element to the relationship. The emotional high dies down. The couple has to put into perspective their lives. They need to have a recommittal to the relationship oftentimes because it's really hard, and I will talk about that later in the presentation as well. And then there's bonding over the preparation as well that can occur. So stress causes conflicts, and there's a lot of stress when couples are becoming new parents and getting prepared for that family life. It can lower marital satisfaction, communication can decrease, and there is an increased focus on roles and less on emotion, again, which I will touch on later in the presentation. So how can we fix this? This is going to be through renegotiation of the relationship and the rules that govern the relationship. Alright, so you're a parent, now what? The baby shower is over, the new baby is here, so why do you feel so crappy? Every couple, no matter how close, will experience a little bit of a rough road when becoming a parent, and I'm here to tell you that that is normal. So watch out for how to get through this conflict. Here's a list of some of the problems that you may notice during first becoming a parent. The attention will all be on the baby. The marital roles will change as you figure out what role works for you and how to work together with your spouse. Finances will obviously be very difficult because you'll go from a two-income household to a one-income household. And oftentimes, it costs up to $12,500 for a baby just in the first year. The next thing you're going to have to renegotiate is your schedule. It's going to be tough to get used to because parents will have to go without a large amount of sleep oftentimes, and of course, postpartum depression can often kick in, and that can cause extra conflicts in the relationship. So, according to an article titled Transition to Parenthood, Changes in Marital Relationship, there are three research-based findings as to why postpartum depression is so hard for many couples. First, it is said that a big issue is that the couple did not know what was coming, no matter how prepared they thought they were for the baby. Second is communication issues, where the quantity and quality of communication changes due to fatigue and focus concern on the baby alone and not on each other as a couple. Finally, if a couple is headed down the wrong path, a baby is certainly not going to help. Big marital issues often arise when a couple has a baby to, quote, save the marriage. So, communicate. The importance is real. With fatigue and constant worry that comes with the new role of being a parent, it can often be hard to have the time or the effort to communicate with your spouse. It's extremely important to not only talk, but also to learn to listen. According to the article, Why Communication Breaks Down After a Baby, and what you can do about it, it is important to actively work on the things listed on this slide that used to come naturally in your relationship. So communicate, learn to talk and listen, form a calendar with your spouse so you can figure out when you're both going to be free. Make time to talk about anything but the baby. The last thing either one of you wants is to be bothered with talk of the baby when that is probably what consumes 90% of your time anyway. Another big issue is intimacy in your relationship. It's important to remember to show affection and love even when you are both too tired for sex. And sex is not everything, but it is very important in a relationship. Obviously, it keeps the couple intimate and keeps them on the same level. So you can do things like schedule sex or do things that are nice for each other. It's just all about keeping that love and that intimacy in the relationship so that the entire relationship is not just the baby. Make time for each other, compromise, and work as a team. It's both of you versus the problem, not one another versus each other. So the next thing I'd like to move on to is transgressions within couples. Transgressions involve deliberate violations of relationally relevant rules and hurtful events. According to our text, Marital Communication, written by Douglas L. Kelly in Rolbust's 2005 Interdependence Theory, a relational transgression is an incident in which a perpetrator is perceived by the victim and perhaps by the perpetrator as well to have knowingly departed from the norms that govern their relationship, thereby harming the victim. Anyway, according to our textbook, there are 6 types of transgressions as described by Metz. The first being privacy and secrets, which include a misuse of information. Next is privileging the primary relationship, which includes putting the other person or event ahead of the relationship or partner. Another transgression is interaction management that involves abusive behavior and destructive conflict strategies. Appropriate emotions is a violation of my expectations for reciprocation and acceptance of love and affection. Commitment is another transgression categorized by not fulfilling promises. Lastly, there is infidelity or cheating, which is one of the most difficult issues for a couple to face based on the strong emotions involved in obviously in this transgression. Since infidelity is one of the most common relational transgressions, I will be focusing on that today and give you 3 pieces of advice on how to move forward as an individual or as a couple after being a victim to infidelity. So remember that infidelity is a reflection on the cheater, not on the victim. Oftentimes, the partner who has been cheated on will blame themselves and suffer from low self-esteem due to identity issues caused by the perception of rejection. Infidelity is caused by the mental state of the perpetrator, not the character or the actions of the victim. So do not dwell on yesterday. In order to move on, an individual must take the time to make sense of things and assess the situation according to our book. Eventually, couples must also learn to have the repair conversation at the appropriate time and place to move forward in their relationship in order to just, fix things. Forgive and do not forget. After a brief pause, just like I said a while ago, couples should be able to transform from negative to positive feelings and also get a renegotiated meaning in their relationship. According to our text on page 184, renegotiated meaning leads to the establishment of new rules or a new relationship definition, which might be weakened, strengthened, returned to normal, or terminated. Renegotiated meaning can be a verbal or nonverbal agreement to establish relationship morals and lead to a possible reconciliation or separation. If a couple would like to continue their relationship, they can seek out a professional counselor to begin rebuilding that trust within their relationship. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is whether or not it's time to give up or stay in the relationship. Sometimes staying in a relationship can actually hurt the whole family, this new family that you've created. It can harm the children more to stay in an unhealthy relationship rather than to just divorce and allow them a more peaceful environment, say at their mom's house and then at their dad's house. In John Gottman's book, What Makes Love Last, him and another therapist named Kim Buhlman found 5 dimensions that can predict the end of a relationship. Couples who scored low later divorced. In dimension 1, if a couples recall negative stories and interactions about each other and they cannot muster up anything positive, they score low in that dimension. In dimension 2, couples score low if they describe things in a way that only represent themselves and how they feel or have felt in the past. Dimension 3 sees the way that couples reminisce. If the memories they have fall on the more negative side, the score is going to be low in that dimension as well. In dimension 4, when the score is low, there is seldom stories of cohesiveness and coordination between the two people. Chaos is often present. There's a lot of fighting. Finally, Dimension 5 says that when a relationship is near the end, the couples will express disappointment that the relationship isn't what they thought it would be. So, a mindful response can have a huge impact on the relationship. It shows the other partner that you are caring and taking into account what they are saying. And as you can see the quote here on the screen, mindfulness is drawing novel distinctions and questioning automatic behavior, defying the limits of categories and premature cognitive commitments, and considering alternative perspectives. And that is from Kelly. So we cannot always take the time to put together a totally mindful response, so sometimes a positive, mindless response is a good alternative. It takes some mindfulness to establish a positive, mindless response, but it helps the relationship instead of just saying the same thing every time. So the quote on the screen here, again, is the key for positive marital communication is not to try to eliminate mindlessness from our experiences, but rather to use mindfulness to establish positive, mindless patterns of behavior. And an example of this could be like waking up in the morning and kissing your wife every morning and not forgetting to do that, because that establishes it's mindless, yes, but it helps the relationship and it helps foster love in the relationship. So that concludes our presentation. I hope you learned a lot about how parents and families can communicate through some of the most stressful times in their lives, and what to do if things aren't going as planned. I hope you got some really interesting information out of this presentation. Thank you for taking the time to listen.